Welcome to New Day Live, where faith and community come together to inspire and encourage. I'm Melchi Johnson, and I thank you for tuning in to the Season 2 finale, where we welcomed New York Times bestselling author Kimberla Lawson Roby. We talked about faith, books of course, success, and special Christmas memories. Thanks for listening to this special holiday edition. It is my great honor to welcome our special guest. She is a New York Times and USA Today best-selling author. She is an inspirational and motivational speaker. She is a business owner. She is a writing and publishing mentor. I could go on and on. But most importantly, I would say, is that she is a woman of God. So you all, please help me welcome Kimberla Lawson Roby to New Day Live. Welcome, Kimberla.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Melchi, for having me, for allowing me this opportunity. And thank you to all of you ladies who are here with us this morning.
Awesome. And Kimberla, I'd like for our guests here to briefly introduce themselves, and then we will get into the heart of our program. So if you want to just take a minute to tell us a little bit about you, many of us already know, but if you want to just tell us a little bit about you, that would be great. So take it away.
All right. Thank you again. So of course, I am a writer of 29 books, a speaker and writing and publishing mentor, as you said. And of course, kind of moved more into that only recently in 2023 and, started my career a little differently than most writers. And so many of my writer friends knew when they were small children that they wanted to be writers. For me, that wasn't the case. I wanted to be everything but a person who writes books. I loved writing. It always felt natural to me, but I wanted to be a doctor. Then there was a time where I wanted to be an attorney and an accountant and a paralegal. So the list was sort of infinite. And then, of course, now, going nearly 30 years ago, finally in 1995, I sat down and wrote my first book. And now fast forwarding today, I'm still doing so. And just grateful for the journey that God has allowed me to be on.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. And we'll just jump right in. And my first question actually is around how I introduced you. And, the words that I use, they're not foreign to you. You've heard yourself introduced that way many times, I'm sure. But what does it mean to you to hear yourself introduced as best-selling author, New York Times best-selling author, USA Today best-selling author, etc.? Did you ever think that you would reach that status, or was it ever even a goal for you to, see your name next to best-selling?
I did not, and that was not my goal. Now, of course, I realize the importance of the New York Times bestsellers list, the USA Today bestsellers list. But when I started out back in the mid to late 90s, I just knew that I wanted to write a book. And of course, you're always hoping that you can get your book into the hands of as many readers as you possibly can. You're hoping that readers will enjoy reading your book. But I didn't start to pay so much attention to it, in all honesty, until I actually had been in the industry for a good while. So the very first bestsellers list that I made was the Essence magazine bestseller list. And at that time, it was called the Blackboard bestsellers list. So I was thrilled out of this world and so excited and grateful when I learned that I had made that list in 1997. Fast forward to the first time I made the New York Times bestseller list, it was in 2004, and it was with my sixth book that I had written. So it took a little while. But of course, now today, all these years later, each time I do hear it, or sometimes when I think about it, it does feel like hearing it for the very first time. And so I'm grateful, to God for having made the list, because it wasn't even a list many years ago that I knew would make a difference in my life. And it certainly has made a great difference in my career overall.
Excellent. What is it about writing and creating that has kept you at it for so long?
It is the idea that I finally had found something that I loved doing and that it felt natural to me, that it didn't feel like a task when I sat down to do it. And so then to realize, okay, now I can write something and hopefully write something that readers will enjoy. And
Hmm.
then as I kept writing and started writing about real life issues, even though I was writing in a fictional format, then my inspiration became this whole idea of writing a book. Initially, when you finish a book, at least for me, terrified that it won't be good enough or maybe
Hmm.
readers won't be happy with it. But then ultimately hearing from readers saying that they enjoyed it or they couldn't put it down or that they recommended it to others. And then eventually, my ultimate inspiration became uh, helping people. When I started hearing from readers saying, I read that story and I could relate to it, or it helped me make a different decision than your character made. And I'll never forget, there are so many stories that will stand out throughout the years, but literally there was a book and it was with Charlotte and my Reverend Curtis Black series and his wife. And
Hmm.
she was having an affair and she was listening to a radio broadcast. She's driving down the street in this particular chapter, and a woman called in, and her son had discovered that she was having an affair and that the marriage was going to end between his mom and his dad, and he ended up taking his life.
Oh my.
And so that made Charlotte in the book start thinking differently. But a woman literally reached out to me and said, I don't really know why I'm telling you this, but
Hmm.
I was planning on going on a cruise with a man that I kind of started seeing and having conversations with. And it's because of this book that I'm canceling that trip and that I'm ending that. She thought about her own children. And that will probably always be, if any person I wrote that book for, it wouldn't have mattered how many people bought it or read it. It was her that will always, remain in my heart that, wow, if you think that you can write something fiction and help someone to that degree, then you know
Right.
that you've done what God wanted you to do with it.
That is wonderful. How blessed, if I may use that word, it must have been for you to know that you were such an inspiration. And, that's when I mentioned goal earlier, that should be the goal, right? Like you just said,
Yes,
to reach people, to encourage and
yes.
inspire people, even through a fictional story. What an amazing testimony
Mhm.
for us all, to remember that people are reading our content, they're listening to us, and that's what if we are people of God, and I can't speak that for all of us, but for those of us who I know that is true for, that should be the goal, to please
Yes,
God, number one, and to help others. So, what an amazing story. Thank you for sharing that.
yes.
Um, in recent years, speaking of the books and all of that, you have done new things. So we have been so excited to read your nonfiction book, The Woman God Created You to Be: Finding Success Through Faith, Spiritually, Personally, and Professionally. You also founded SWAF, or the Successful Women of Faith, the online community for sisters, and of which I am a very proud and blessed member. And many of the ladies joining us today are also part of that group. You also launched your writing and publishing mentor or masterclass. So tell us how you have kind of shifted into these new things and the journey behind developing these new programs for your career.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much to you and all of the other women who are here who were kind enough to join the community, and you have remained a part of it really since the beginning. Mostly everyone that I see here who are sisters of that particular group. What's so interesting is that you would mention my first and only thus far nonfiction book, The SWAF Community, and my master classes, because those are all things that I never ever thought that I would do under
Mhm.
any circumstances. Who would have even imagined, even when God placed it on my heart, and that was in 2016, to write a nonfiction book, I was terrified. It was the first time in my writing career that I had been terrified, more so than when I wrote my first book and was trying to get it out there. Because at that point, I had written only fiction. And so 27 novels, and now I'm hearing God say, okay, it's time for this shift. You're going to do something different. And I just didn't know how I would make that happen. And so I wanted it to go away. That was a calling on my life that I truly wanted God to take away. And I can remember having thoughts of, I hear you. And Lord, I am at a place finally in my life where I only want to do what you are asking me to do, what you are assigning to my life. But what else do you have? Because it certainly can't be this, I'm telling him this absolutely can't be it. These must be my own thoughts. I don't know where it's coming from, but I don't write nonfiction and I don't even know how to do it. And so then I became even more afraid because I thought, well, if I move forward with doing this, what if I don't do a great enough job? What if I can't help women in the way that I believe God wants me to help them? And so I struggled with that on and off for the remainder of 2016. When I woke up out of my sleep and wrote down what I even thought the title was going to be at that time, Hearing God's Call and Finding Your Purpose, what ended up being a chapter in the book, I still struggled with it and I fought against it. And I went all the way through 2017 even. So the rest of 2016, all of 2017. But as I was moving into the middle and end of 2017, I started just waking up with it and going to bed with it, and it wouldn't go away. It just wouldn't go away. And that's when I finally said, okay, I've got to just surrender. And I decided to end my Reverend Curtis Black series. So I wrote the final book in 2017. My publisher planned for it to be released in 2018. And I decided that after I came back from the tour for the book, Better Late Than Never, in 2017, that I would take a break for the rest of the year. And then early 2019, I just went into deep prayer, just really asking God, what is it? What is this book supposed to be about? And praying about what each of the chapters would be. And so it ended up being the woman God created you to be. And then what ultimately really showed me completely what the book was going to be about was when he revealed to me that it would be about not just one part of our lives and in terms of trying to become all that he wants us to be, but that we have to focus on three main areas of our lives. And that is the spiritual part of who we are as women, the personal part of our lives, and then the professional part and the purpose. And so it is making sure that we have all three areas intact, our relationship with him. And, are we treating people the way we want to be treated? Are we okay in our personal lives and our relationships with our significant others or with our husbands or even with our friends and coworkers? Are we taking care of ourselves? Are we executing self-care in a manner that will allow us to be okay mentally and emotionally? And then in terms of purpose, are we really working in our purpose, and are we doing it in a way that we do not jeopardize our faith? Is it just about money and being successful and being famous? Or are we really working in our purpose and working in our businesses in a way that it helps us serve others?
Yes. Awesome. And this is a perfect segue into my next question, which is, you have kept faith central in your writing, even obviously in the fiction in the Reverend Church,
Yes.
Curtis Black series. So why is keeping faith so central to your writing important to you personally?
It's important to me because it's who I am. I was raised up from the time I was a small girl from my parents and grandparents, and in particular, my mother and my maternal grandmother. And so it is just a part of my being. It's who I am. And so if I were to try and write fiction or nonfiction and not include my faith, you would know it. It would ring through. I would not be able to connect with my readers, and it wouldn't be a part of who I am authentically. And so over the years, especially when I started writing about my Reverend Curtis Black stories and that series. And so then that question would come up, do you believe that your books fall into the category of Christian fiction? Are you a part of that genre? Because it was a little different than what had become the norm in terms of what Christian fiction was supposed to be. And so my answer was always that I had not thought about it, which was the truth. I just saw myself as a writer. And what I ultimately realized was that I just so happened to be a Christian woman who wrote fiction. And so that's why I believe my books resonated with readers in general, but then they began resonating with Christian women. So yeah, that's a part of who I am. And what I share all the time is if I am writing, if I am speaking, if I am probably even just having a conversation with you, you're going to get the God in me. You know, if I'm on social media every now and then, you're going to see that. And so if you're not okay with that, I'm probably not the person for you to follow.
Exactly. Thank you. I want to pause here and just take a moment to thank New Day's 2023 Purpose Partners, whose generosity has made today's episode possible. So grateful to each of our individual partners and to our business partner and my good friend, Dr. Robert Selden at Selden Orthodontics with offices in Huntersville and Charlotte, North Carolina. And they pride themselves on giving their patients simply spectacular smiles. So I am so grateful for those who have sort of patronized us, if you will, and whose generosity has really blessed us in all that we have set out to do. So thank you to those. So back to our questions. So Kimberla, you and I, before we started allowing others to join us, we're just talking about, Zoom issues and email issues. And I will just share with everyone this week when I was emailing, I believe it was Tuesday or Wednesday or so, I was emailing folks the Zoom link and, just kind of giving some details. And I realized about maybe after 6 people that I'd emailed that your name was misspelled in the subject line and your Lawson and Roby was hyphenated and your name probably was misspelled in the body of the email. And I was like, really? What is happening? So I went back and, sort of corrected myself to the folks that I had, messed that up on and went back and fixed it. But at a point there, I was like, I'm done with this. I'm ready for this to be done. Just, y'all will find the Zoom link however you can find it. So it was just one thing after the next. And then again, you and I were talking about just Zoom stuff happening and, one thing after the other and frustration after frustration. So my next question for you is, how do you handle those moments when it is just, okay, here we go. It's one thing after another, and this doesn't work, and that doesn't work, and you're an editor or a writer, and you notice all of these misspellings or other things that you didn't catch before. And I'm actually going to open it up to our guest here, our audience. And if you all want to plop in the chat, how do you handle those moments when they come? So Kimberla, you can start us off and others can join in the chat, but I am going to be taking some notes because I was like almost done that the other day.
I'm telling you, and it does happen. It's interestingly enough, some of you in the SWAF community, Yolanda had posted something. She was just kind of checking in and saying hello to us. And I was like, oh, I needed that day because I was having such a bad technical difficulty situation. I needed to record something. I needed it to download the recording from Zoom in HD. And it was a portion of something I was going to include in my masterclass. And I discovered that the resolution was awful. It wasn't at 1080. And I thought, okay, maybe I didn't click something. And so I went back in. It's like, okay, let me click the HD on, inside the portal part of Zoom, and still just tested it. It was the same thing. And I thought, oh my gosh, I got to do this today. It wasn't like I had until tomorrow. And if I did, I wouldn't have more than a couple of hours the next morning before I needed this complete. And so I thought, okay, let me just take a step back, because then you start to think, you're not going to control anything that you can't control. That's just a
Yes.
fact. We can get frustrated, we can get upset, we can even become angry, afraid, whatever it might be. Not going to change anything. And
Mm-hmm.
so I thought, let me contact Zoom. And then that's when they let me know that because they have so many users now, their bandwidth would be completely overloaded. So you can click HD inside the settings, but you still need to contact them, and they need to give you access on the back end to HD recordings and downloads. But that was going to take a couple of days or so. And then I realized, wait a minute, this isn't the only way to record.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't the only way for me to record this video and get this. And I thought, I have my SWAF community. And so we use that for what we use it for as women in the community. And I created it for us to be able to come together as like-minded Christian women of God, women who love God. But I also have something great in here. I have this recording ability, and I was able to use that. And so I think what we have to do is take a step back. We have to pray for God to give us, some other option. Lord, how
Yes.
do I fix this? Sometimes we forget to go to him when we're struggling. And so that's what I had to do. And little, did I know he was going to answer, and he answered very quickly because I needed it that day. I didn't need it tomorrow or the next day. Everything is in God's timing, but that is proof that he does sometimes give us the desires of our heart, and he
Yes.
always gives us what we need when we need it.
So well said, and thank you for sharing that. Yes, it does. We do have to come back to the mindset of, okay, God, I will rely on you to help me get through this. And unfortunately, I don't always come to that thought process right away, but it's God who actually, I think, brings us to his own place.
And
So,
that's the thing. And I
yeah.
think when you were talking about maybe had some typos or misspellings, and I've had that happen.
Hmm.
If I've sent out a newsletter, or even on my page for my class, I noticed the word just this week. I noticed the word publishing when it should have been published.
Hmm.
And I thought, that's even worse for me than maybe for someone else. As a writer of 29 books, that looks really awful. That I am teaching a master class on making sure you've got it proofread, and so those moments happen. But it also says that we are not perfect, and mistakes are going to
Right.
happen, and that's the reason we have to have grace for other people, because there are going to be moments where we're going to need people to give us grace as well.
So, so true. Yes,
Yeah.
and amen to that. Absolutely so true. Thank you so much. I will do better next time, y'all. I promise. All right. We are actually winding down here. The time has flown by, and I could be on the program here all day. But again, I don't want to hold you all too long. But Kimberla, we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about the holiday season. So, what do you like most about the holiday season, and what are you most looking forward to in the new year?
So we were talking about that a little bit when we first signed on this morning. And so it is absolutely my childhood history, and the
Yeah.
Christmases and the experiences. My mom loved everything Christmas. So, Black Friday was the beginning of it all, sometimes a little bit earlier, but definitely then. That's when we were putting up our Christmas tree and trimming it. And that's when the shopping began, for her and my dad, for me and my brothers, and for everyone else. And that tradition continued even after my grandparents passed away. And
Mhm.
then when my parents weren't together anymore, that my mom loved it. She hated to see the sun go down on
Mhm.
Christmas. That's how much she loved it. And, the huge dinner gatherings. And even in December, even once I was married to Will, we spent most of our evenings and weekends at my mom's house throughout the
Mhm.
entire month of December, because that's where we celebrated. To this day, I've never ever put up a Christmas tree in my
Wow.
home, and in the
Mhm.
all my adult life. That's where I experienced Christmas. That's where I loved it. That's where we did everything. Fast forward to when my mom passed away in 2001,
Yeah.
moving into that fall. So she passed away in November. In that December, I said to Will, I don't care where we go, and I don't care where you take me, but I need to be as far away from Illinois as I can possibly be. That's when
Yeah.
everything shifted because I didn't want to be with family. I
Yeah.
didn't want to be with anyone. We did celebrate Thanksgiving that same month that she passed away, and we did it here with everyone, and I made it through it. But I thought I can't do it. And so we went to Florida. We were
Wow.
literally in Florida that
Mm-hmm.
first Christmas, about a month after she passed away. And from there on, whenever Black Friday came, I would get through Thanksgiving, and every Black Friday, I started praying for January 1st, for
Yeah.
God to let it come as quickly as it possibly could. So there was no decorating. I love Santas and I love my Black Santas. I have
Mm-hmm.
been collecting them for years, and friends started giving me them because I loved them so much. So even though I didn't put up a Christmas tree, that was a big part of how I decorated throughout the house. I never took any bins out. I never took anything out. I didn't put a wreath up on our doors. I stopped doing everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I would buy the gifts, get them out to family, friends, everybody who we exchange with, all of our nieces and nephews, my bonus son, daughter-in-law, our grandchildren, all of that. And I
Right.
kept going, but it was just stressful for me and very, very sad. I couldn't watch Christmas movies anymore because I would cry through all of
Mm-hmm.
them. Because as we know, all Christmas movies are centered on family and
Yeah.
that final Christmas gathering, either on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. And so little did I know, my editor said to me, Kim, most authors, have a Christmas book, and I believe every author should have at least one Christmas book throughout their career.
Mm-hmm.
And you should start thinking about that. And so I had not. So I said, okay, I think I will. And so then about a year later, I had already signed the contract. That was included in my contract with two of my Curtis Black books and another novel. It was a 4-book deal. And I said to her, Beth, I think I'm going to have to return the
Mm-hmm.
advance for
Yeah.
that part of it. And I would be fine with doing that. I just don't think I can write this. And she said, no, we don't want your money. We don't want the money back. What is it that you think it is? I said, I don't know what I would write. She said, well, tell me about Christmas.
Mm.
So I know I'm being lengthy and I'm sorry for being
All
so lengthy,
good.
but I'm sharing this with all of you for a reason. I shared everything that I just shared with all of you about how I can no longer celebrate Christmas, how much
Mm-hmm.
I miss my mom, how sad I am. And she said, that's your story. That's the
Wow.
story that you're supposed to be writing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where A Christmas Prayer was born. And so the story goes on. Oh, thank you, Rochinda. Thank you.
That
And
is awesome.
oh,
Oh, yes. So special.
I'm so sorry.
No, you are fine. You are fine.
And so I thought I had to really go into prayer for
Yeah.
God to just release me from all the pain and the sadness and to get back to doing what I knew my mom wanted me to do and what she would
Yeah.
be happy about me doing and getting together with family again and celebrating and decorating. And so I created a prayer
Mm-hmm.
in the book for anyone who might be experiencing Christmas in the way that I once was. And
Yeah.
talk about writing being therapeutic. I've always known that writing was therapeutic, but this was proof in a way that I had not even imagined. Because from that moment on, I wrote that book in 2013. It was released in 2014.
Mm-hmm.
I have been decorating and celebrating and listening to Christmas music and watching Christmas movies the entire month of December
Yes.
ever since then. So, everything we go through, it's for a reason. And my mom used to always say, for everything bad, something good comes out of it. So now I hear from women all the time, every season saying, I lost my love for Christmas because I lost my mom or my dad, or I lost both, or I lost a sibling or a best friend. And now reading this book, I'm praying this prayer and I'm
Yeah.
celebrating Christmas again. And so it's just been a blessing. It's
Yeah.
like I've come full circle, but God allowed me to go through that pain so that I would be able to write that book and
Yeah.
then help others who were experiencing the same situation.
That is so beautiful and so wonderful. And I don't know if you're seeing the chat, but I echo what our audience is saying, our friends are saying here, but God, and God is faithful. And many of us will spend Christmas for the first time this year without loved ones. And just know that we are praying for all of us. I know it's a hard, time, but God is so good. And Rochinda, I just appreciate you having that copy right there to share with us as a reminder of what we are all saying here, that He is faithful and that He will always bring us through. So, Kimberla, thank you so much for sharing that. And again, we are praying for everyone who are going through grief here at the holidays. You could have lost someone a few years ago. It doesn't matter. That pain is still or can be fresh. So we will be praying, even in the midst of the hustle and bustle. Some of us still feel that. So we will be
Yes,
in prayer with one another. So thank you.
absolutely.